Hello and welcome to another episode of Africa Update, where we bring you happenings of what's taking place on this beautiful black continent we call home, Africa. Yes, from our studios here in Abuja. And this week on the program, I have, one of my very esteemed guests who went on a long break. Somehow he's back, and you'll see him after the short break to stay with us. Yeah, you're wondering why was she all smiles and who is this guest? Yes, it's none other than Ambassador Bulus Lolo. He used to be one of our staples. Well, he went on sabbatical. I'm yet to understand what the sabbatical is about, but it's good to have you back on the program. Yes, sharing your insights with us. Now, we're going to be looking at one of the happenings that was taking place currently, actually, in the world, which is the United Nations General Assembly. Started on the 22nd and it's going to end on the 29th. That's on Monday. But today we're going to be talking about how far Africa has fared on that occasion. And of course, there are two, really one, but as Nigerians, we're going to be patriotic and equally show our own speech. So let's look at the speeches. Two major speeches we're going to be looking at from that UNGA.
For 2 decades, Africa has spoken in one voice, demanding justice, equity, and representation in the highest organ of global governance. This demand, however, continues to be ignored, deferred, or endlessly debated to the detriment of both Africa and the legitimacy of the United Nations itself. You cannot claim to be the United Nations while disregarding the voice of 54 nations. It is not possible. Africa is no longer willing to wait on the margins of global governance while decisions about peace, security, and development are made without our understanding, without our perspectives, and without our voice. Africa's exclusion is not only unacceptable, unfair, and grossly unjust, it also undermines the very credibility of the United Nations, this organization. Africa dominates most of the Security Council agenda, provides some of the largest contingents of UN peacekeeping forces, and bears the heaviest costs of instability. Yet we remain the only continent without a permanent seat at the main table, where decisions about our destiny are made. Africa deserves, ladies and gentlemen, at the very least, 2 permanent seats with full rights, including the right to veto, and 2 additional non-permanent seats on the United Nations Security Council. The world must understand that reforming the Security Council is not a favor to Africa or to anybody. It is a necessity for the United Nations' own survival.
Nigeria must have a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. This should take place. This should take place as part of a wider process of institutional reform. 2, we need urgent action to promote sovereign debt relief and access to trade and financing. 3, countries that host minerals must benefit from those minerals. And 4th, the digital divide must close. As our friend, the Secretary General, has said, AI must stand for Africa included.
I like the ending of that statement, AI must stand for Africa included. Quite a very catchy phrase there. Yeah. And we saw quite a lot of catchy phrases even from the speech of President Ruto of Kenya. Yeah. Quite a lot he said there. Quite 30 minutes actually, and quite very heavy punches. Now, one of the things he mentioned, which will align to what he said in this speech seeking for the permanent seats, was that Kenya went to Haiti and sort of brought some sort of stability when the UN somehow were a bit lax about it. Now that goes to show how much we take security, albeit it not being on working for us in continent, but out there we're doing quite a good job. Right. All in all, what do you make of these beautiful proclamations and agitations of these people?
Well, thank you, Chiamaka. And again, let me just start by thanking you and expressing my delight to be on your program. I went on a break in order to rejuvenate and give you more ideas.
No, thank you.
But on a serious note, We are at that time of the year when the rest of the world looks forward to what will come out of New York. The General Assembly has the history of always coming up with momentous moments where statements are made, decisions are also taken, and the fate of humanity is affected sometimes for good or bad. But of the two speeches that you played the clips, both of William Ruto and that of Vice President Shetima. Now, they both spoke to the issue of permanent seat for Africa. Yes, let me share with our viewers today that the last time the Security Council was reformed substantially was in 1965.
Oh, that's about 60 years ago.
60 years exactly this year. That was when the membership was increased to the present 15. So in the last 60 years, no additional members have been brought to the Security Council. There are 5 permanent members who are the actual owners of the Security Council.
When you say owners?
Yes, they are the owners because once one of the 5 votes no, it negates the entire vote of the council, meaning no resolution will be adopted with a negative vote from a permanent member. So they are the owners. And number 2, 10 countries are elected for 2-year term. And by the provisional rules of the Security Council, an elected member cannot go back to back, meaning you've served 2015 or rather 2025, 2026. You can't immediately contest to return to the council. You have to wait another 2 years before you can come back by their provisional rules. But the permanent members are there January through December.
All year round. Winter,
all year
summer.
round, all decades. So they're permanent. In fact, in the words of Museveni in 2010, Museveni declared on the floor of the Security Council that elected members of the council are tourists. And indeed they are tourists because
Seems that way.
if you are elected, you spend your first year learning the protocol of the council. And it is so exhausting that by your second year, you are already tired and looking forward to go. Because in any case, midnight of December 31 of the year of your exit, you are taken off the list of the council's membership. You can't receive even a document once it is midnight of December 31 when you are leaving. So now, on the issue of reform, if since 1965 no new members have been admitted, and Africa is making a case, and we made that case very loud and clear in 2005. Incidentally, Nigeria was the chair of the African Union in 2005, President Obasanjo. Then they adopted what they called the Ezulwini Consensus in then Swaziland, all right? That demanded 2 permanent seats, which is what President Ruto echoed, and 2 non-permanent seats with veto power. If there was a time in recent times that there was the chance of the Security Council being reformed, it was in that 2005. But guess what? We also lost it there because whereas other aspirants were willing to take permanent membership, and here I have Brazil, I have India, and I have Japan that were willing and willing to accept permanent membership with or without veto. Africa said it had to be 2 permanent seats with veto power. So that played to the politics of the Security Council.
Okay, so I'm going to pause a bit. Now, you can be a permanent member with no veto power.
Yes, no. The permanent members today are only 5.
Okay.
And each has a veto.
Okay.
All right? And that veto is actually the power of the council.
Okay.
Without the veto today, the international politics as we have it would be different.
Okay.
And that is why the war in Ukraine is going on.
I remember then, when it started, Russia vetoed whatever came up and nothing could happen.
And Gaza, you will never ever get the UN to take a vote that is negative to Israel without the United States vetoing that resolution. About a few weeks ago, they did. So the veto is the real power in the Security Council. And if you become a permanent member without the veto, then the others must drop their own veto. So it's like you enjoy this enormous power, and somebody is asking you in the name of the reform to forgo that power. Nobody would do it. And how did they get it? It is the booty of the end of the Second World War in 1945, that the Allied powers as they were, who emerged victorious, formed the United Nations in San Francisco and came up with this arrangement that to save succeeding generation from the scourge of war, there must be a Security Council with the primary responsibility of maintaining international peace and security.
Now, that's, even Ruto has said that, and even if you look at the speech, the full speech of our president, Shettima, he has said that, what you've said now, but and they've come to the conclusion that that has not happened so far. Or that has still to happen in the last decade or so.
We haven't had a war like the Second World War again.
Okay.
But we also have not had a situation where now and again you've not had skirmishes, you've not had conflicts. Like right now, there is war between Russia and Ukraine. There is Israel hitting the Palestinian people in Gaza endlessly, with the prospect, in fact, of obliterating Gaza, knocking down almost every building that stands in Gaza so that it will be reconstructed. More or less, those structures that were there will be cleared as if willingly people demolished their homes in order to rebuild. If they rebuild, whose interest will it be? And where else can the world stand and see a situation as is happening today in Gaza, where how many millions were in Gaza? They've all been driven. All right? I'm not questioning, and I'm not here to do that. Why? What has brought about the conflict? But the scale of it, the dimension of it, is what we must question.
Okay. All right. So now, I asked earlier, do you think, I don't think you've actually told me if we're actually ready for that permanent sit. A lot of people out there, I've heard people say, oh, no, we don't need it. We need to clean up house first, especially for Nigeria. We need to clean up house first. You can't have your own security problems. And then you go there to now go and say you want to be on the security seat, and all that Africa is, rife with wars and monarchical democracies and all that. So do you think as a continent, one, that we deserve it? One more thing again, Kashim Shettima specifically said Nigeria. He didn't go there to push the Africa agenda. He pushed the Nigeria. Be on the permanent seat, patriotic as I am and wonderful,
Right. Well, thank you so much about this question whether Africa is deserving. The argument has been made, and it is sound, that for equity, for representation, and for voice, and in fact democratization, the Security Council must and should be reformed. That's one. So I concede. Okay. The second is Africa must have a permanent seat on the council. But this is the interesting part today. That when I was in New York 2002 through 2007, and especially 2005 that I talked of, there was this effort to identify which countries in Africa should represent the continent. There have been three main contenders: Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt, contending for two. Now, out of three, one will drop out. What would be the criteria of representation? Egypt has made its case. One, an Arab country. Two, Islamic representation. And then three, that they're Africans. So triple identity for Egypt. All right? Then Nigeria, on the other hand, says, you know what? We are the largest economy. We are the largest in population. We have this and that and that, and therefore Africa's leadership should be given. My take on this is, I would love to see Nigeria occupy a permanent seat. And if we don't get that permanent seat, it will be our undoing as a people. How? Let us align our internal politics with our external aspirations, because there is a link between foreign policy and domestic policy. Someone has said, and I've used that too, that we must address our internal contradictions. There are internal contradictions in this country, wherein sometimes in assigning and giving people opportunities, you look at and question, what is their religion? What is their ethnicity? What is their social background? And if you bring these three to play, you are then necessarily undermining your own effectiveness and efficiency. But if you place merit as your number one criteria, two, your challenge, you need the best hand to tackle your most difficult problem. Not whether or not the person you are assigning is a brother, is a neighbor, or is of the same religious persuasion as you are. And so, if we get it right, the world will come looking for us to say, look, this seat belongs to you. And I hope that our leaders will wake up to this reality. When you go out there and say Nigeria should be given, they listen to you. But then when they weigh it against some of your own practices, insecurity is this high today in the country, unemployment is this high, so many other things that we are not supposed to be where we are developmentally as a nation. After 65 years of independence, Nigeria is supposed to be ranking and rubbing shoulders as an industrialized country.
Wow. Quite very, very strong words there. We're going to go on a short break. When they come back from that break, the conversation continues. Please do stay with us. Welcome back to Africa Update here on Trust TV. Ambassador, now back to you. Well, before we went on the break, earlier in the conversation, you mentioned about 15, just 15 seats on the Security Council. And I'm sure someone out there is wondering, while 190 countries can each have a seat on the Security Council, saying that we all have security problems one way or another in our countries. Why is that so?
Well, by the Charter of the United Nations, there are 6 principal organs, as you know. The General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, the Secretariat, and the International Court of Justice, plus the Trusteeship Council, but that's another story. Now, the General Assembly serves as the deliberative organ of the United Nations. And so all member countries belong to the General Assembly. But the others have limited membership. ECOSOC, for instance, the Economic and Social Council, only has 54 elected members, and they serve for 3 years each. In ECOSOC, you can go many times if your region allows you, all right? But like I said earlier, on the Security Council, there are only, and this was since 1965, when they brought the number from 10 to 15. And of the 10, elected members, you can only serve a maximum of 2 years, 24 months. You must exit, and you can't come back immediately. You must wait another 24 months. And they claim that the limited membership is to make for more effective and efficient decision making.
Okay.
But it is more because, like I said, it was the product of the end of the Second World War, wherein the number of countries that participated and were on the Allied side was very limited. And once the war was over, they shared amongst themselves and took what they needed to take, and also conferred. One thing people don't know is that a resolution passed by the Security Council is in and of itself international law. So it is enforceable. It is only the Security Council also that can mandate the UN, which then translates the rest of the world to go to war. They did that in Iraq during Saddam. They did that in Libya during Gaddafi. All right? But since then, they've not been able to mobilize a consensus in order to act as a unified body.
Okay.
Now, the powers of the council are such that, in fact, it's one of the arguments they use, that by bringing all countries, and you said, why can't all belong? There are countries that are regarded as rogue states, sponsors of whatever the world is against, whether it is drugs, whether it is terrorism, or other factors. Okay? So they want to see you demonstrate your ability to fulfill the responsibility of membership.
Okay.
And so for that reason, but it also fits into power play. You have a limited club, so it gives you more power. By the time you admit more people, you whittle that very power.
Okay.
But that explains anyway why there are limited members.
Okay, so we're going to just deviate a bit. You know, you mentioned the ICC, and I recall a news came out earlier that the AES has pulled out of the ICC. What does that really mean for them? That's Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso.
They went there voluntarily.
Okay.
Pulling out is a sovereign decision.
Okay.
But once you sign that instrument, it means you are binding yourself to its provisions. Meaning, if you are required to take action, you will take action. But knowing what I know about the workings of the United Nations and especially the Security Council, their pulling out is of no consequence. Because once even the heads of state of those countries today, any of them refer to the ICC by the Security Council, whether they've signed the instrument or not, they'll pick them up like rabbits and present them for trial. We saw it with al-Bashir. And some are saying, okay, Putin has not gone because he's afraid he may be arrested. But Putin was recently in Alaska and he was given a red carpet treatment. Why? Because America was not ready for any embarrassment. And here again is the weakness of the international system, and especially the UN, that small states without economic and military power are the ones that are compelled to abide by international law. But then the big guys, powerful states, nuclear states, you dare not. Why haven't they gone for North Korea?
Yeah, well, that's a very, I don't think anybody wants to know the outcome of that venture if they were to go there. Now, somehow during the course of the conversation, you dabbled into the whole Gaza-Palestinian situation.
Right.
And, you know, here in Africa, we have some countries that are strongly speaking for Palestinian, and those that are against it. Of course, Nigeria has taken a stand to speak for it. Ghana, I believe, has spoken for it. And I think some other countries, I think Eritrea and Cameroon are speaking for Israel, or rather against the Palestinian state. Now, I know that these things happening way over there in the Arab Peninsula, and we're over here in Africa. How, you know, I think the question for me is the impact of our for or against in this matter.
Again, we will go down memory lane to 1947, before the creation of the State of Israel, wherein there was an attempt to create a state then for Israel, but there was resistance. We don't have much time for me to speak to those issues. All I will tell you is the Middle East is a very complicated region, and especially the Arab-Israeli conflict, which is Israel-Palestine. We have for a long time adopted a two-state policy of an independent state of Palestine living side by side with Israel, enjoying security and enjoying safety. But as it is now, the dynamics have changed on the ground, where there is no mention of two-state by Israel, but the rest of the world is talking about it. This is probably the closest again that we have come to having the prospect of a two-state solution since the time of Bill Clinton and before him, Jimmy Carter. Whether or not America will sign on to it, the world will see. But it's quite interesting now that of the 5 permanent members, it is only the United States that is holding out resolutely against an independent Palestinian state. If they sign on, within months, that conflict will take a new direction and a free Palestine will come to be. That's my hope. That's my prayer, that the Palestinians enjoying their freedom in their own independent country, Israel enjoying its security without any threat of annihilation, so that they become neighbors. They are, after all, closely linked by blood. And so let it be that that sanguine relationship translates into peaceful relationship.
All right, thank you so much, Ambassador. That's the much we have, and that's the much time we have on the program today. That's the much we can take. Thank you so much for your insights as always. Hopefully we'll have you back soon enough again. You won't go on another sabbatical leave again.
I don't know, but I'll be back.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be back, thank you.
Thank you. That's the much you have for you on the program. Today's been quite insightful. I hope you've learned something, understood better how the politics works, and maybe why Africa is still going to keep speaking and maybe fighting for that permanent seat on the Security Council. It's been a beautiful time on the program today. I've been your host, Chiamaka Nwafor. Same time, same place next week. Bye for now.